one we're about to explore together is disrupting this workplace in significant ways and more than any time that I can remember in our history. So by the way, as we go along, if you've got questions, please drop them into the Q&A or chat boxes. Kathy's going to hold on to them and then ask them towards the end. So feel free to go ahead and give us your questions as we go along. And we're also going to have time to network with one another and discuss what you're seeing and hearing on the subject in the next few minutes. But let's dig in. I wanted to introduce you to Allison. Allison is a married mother of 3 children. Her children are ages 11, 9, and 3. She works as an office manager for a law firm. And during most of 2021, she worked from home, but was required to return to the office full time at the end of the year. So you know what that means. Back to finding affordable childcare, long traffic delays on 285, stressful days, which she happens to have a short-tempered boss, and getting home just in time to see her 3-year-old off to bed. So Allison recently told her husband she was rethinking her priorities. The time spent working from home made her realize, oh gosh, her children were growing up quickly and she was missing way too much. Her take-home pay minus the commuting expense and child care costs weren't even worth it anymore, not to mention working in an environment where she really didn't have anywhere to go career-wise. So her husband agreed, and they would figure it out financially until she could find a job that better met her needs. So Allison became one of the 4.53 million people in the United States who quit their jobs in just the month of November of last year. And I imagine chances are good you know someone like Allison. We'll meet Andrea. Andrea was a junior HR executive in a software company. And she's exhausted. During the past 2 years of navigating through the pandemic, Andrea has been investing time way above and beyond her normal responsibilities, talking with hundreds of employees throughout the company, trying to meet their needs, creating proposals for remote work, employee well-being initiatives. And she's also has been raising the flag concerning the loss of focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it seems that top leadership is consumed with forecasted financial losses due to supply chain issues, et cetera. So they don't have the time that they need to entertain people issues, nor the desire. So Andrea has become disillusioned by the erosion of trust in her company, which once energized her. And her level of stress, already high, has increased because she's a single mom, and she's a single mom of a teenage son. She's watching him fall behind academically as he had to attend school from home for a year and a half. So Andrea has reached her breaking point, and she's decided to look for another job with an organization whose values are similar to hers. So Andrea became one more statistic tracked by LinkedIn in the 54% year-over-year increase of those who changed their jobs in the past year. Maybe you've met Andrea. Well, psychology explains why people may be leaving their jobs in such large numbers. If you look to your own pandemic experience, probably shows that this crazy period has caused us to rethink our values and our priorities. And so the science has a name for this phenomenon. It's called the Michelangelo Effect. And it's in honor of the way a sculptor chips away at a block of stone, to reveal the form waiting to emerge underneath. And so the pandemic did the same thing to us, chipping away the distraction, the bluster of pre-COVID professional life, and forcing us to confront the deeper truths about what we want out of our lives. So in fact, COVID is forcing us to chip away at those deeper truths about what's really important to us. Well, according to research reported by the World Economic Forum and in an article published last month, many employees are actually leaving in search of something more fulfilling, better suited to their values. So they're not just leaving, they're leaving in search of. LinkedIn CEO Ryan Roslansky explained to Time recently how his company is seeing these shifts play out on the LinkedIn platform, which of course is the world's largest professional network. And so looking at the number of members that changed jobs in September of last year, that number is currently 54% year over year higher. 54% year over year higher among those who've changed jobs. So therefore the shift, we used to call it the Great Resignation until late last year. And so now the phenomenon has been renamed to the Great Reshuffle. And of course, women in particular are more so impacted by the Great Reshuffle. According to leanin.org and McKinsey & Company's 2021 annual report on women in the workplace, women are now more significantly burned out and increasingly more so than men. If you just look at the healthcare industry and take a look at the nursing population, there's a statistic out there that's very concerning. 20 to 30% of nurses, mostly women, of course, and have stated that they have an intention to leave the profession within the year. That's based on research that came out of the International Council of Nurses. And you may recall Andrea, highly invested in the employee concerns and during the pandemic and the erosion of DEI efforts. This seems to be very typical of female leaders, much more so than males, to be very wrapped up in the concerns of their employees, which also contributes to a burnout. And this is all according to the leanin.org study. So the number one reason women leave current employers is a lack of work-life balance, leading to burnout. So I want to ask you, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? So we're going to put you in breakout rooms and give you about 10 minutes. It'd be really interesting to hear your discussion around these two questions. What evidence have you found in your workplace that people are considering reshuffling jobs, leaving and going to somewhere else? And then also, what is your company or what other best practices have you seen or heard of that companies are doing to retain employees and then to attract employees? So both to retain and attract employees. We're going to put those questions in the chat so that you'll have those to refer to. And if you will, go ahead and assign somebody to present the top 2 best practices as we debrief this when you come back. So try to decide what are the top 2 best practices that you discussed and assign someone that can talk to those when we return. So if we got our breakout rooms ready to go?
Yes, we do.
All right, we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
All right, here we go. And everyone could just accept to go ahead into the breakout rooms. And once you accept, you'll be right in the breakout rooms.
Okay, we go ahead and put those questions in the chat area for people to refer to.
Go ahead. Let's see. Let's put this on. I'll put this first. All right, and I'll be right back. I'm gonna go in.
Okay.
In everybody's room.
So if anybody's joining us and they haven't been put in a breakout room, that's where we are. We're in breakout rooms discussing these two questions. So questions are in the chat. I want to know, what evidence have you found in your workplace that people are considering reshuffling their jobs? And what is your company doing to retain employees? We'll debrief in just a few minutes. All right, so hopefully people are returning back into the full session. And as you're returning, I would love to hear from a volunteer, at least one volunteer, of what you discussed in terms of what is it that you're hearing? What is it that you're seeing inside of your organizations that indicates that people may be desiring to leave? Hopefully you're not hearing that, but if you are, how would you know, in other words? And then what are you doing to retain that talent? Let's
We have
see.
people who are just coming back in.
That's coming back in. All right.
Yep, they're just coming back in. So you may want to repeat that again so we can
I will.
make sure everyone's involved. Yeah.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So as you're coming back in, I would love to hear from a couple of your volunteered spokespeople about what it was that you discussed. What is it that you're hearing and seeing and feeling about this great reshuffling, and what are you doing about it? So is there a volunteer that we can hear from that you could unmute yourself, unmute your video? Love to hear from you.
I'll go.
Oh, great. Thanks, Lee.
And Amy just popped on too. So Amy and I work together, Amy Love, and both of us are very happy where we are, and we're not experiencing any kind of a shuffle, like looking back, perhaps. We've been in situations where that could have been possible, and we certainly can understand today if we didn't love where we were, and we're like in Andrea's situation or Allison's, where we had that chance to have a different type of life working from home and all that, then to have to be told we had to go back to the office and leave our children or pets and families and home, that would be very difficult. But she and I are neither one in that situation. So
great. So what have you heard or seen as a best practice, maybe you discussed in your group, about how to retain people and how to attract people into the organization?
Yeah, our leadership team they're very big on empowering us within the organization, which feels fantastic to be appreciated and acknowledged for what you bring to the organization. They're very good at identifying strengths in an individual. And I work for the Better Business Bureau, and they'll identify strengths of a staff person and, create a job for them that matches those strengths. I mean, it's just, we all work together so well and all the time to better the organization, but at the same time to better ourselves. They invest in us with personal development, and we have an employee engagement committee. They give us stuff all the time, whether it's Amazon gift cards or just some money, because one day, early Fridays during the spring and summer. So I feel very valued and appreciated and acknowledged.
Well, congratulations to the Better Business Bureau for having a strengths-based approach, valuing their employees enough to give them internal opportunities to move around and fit their strengths to possible job opportunities within. Those are really core to helping people feel valued. So kudos to them. Who else had some best practices? Thank you so much, Kimberly. Who else has some best practices that they discussed? Be willing to volunteer.
I'll speak up. I was with Kimber, but we did mention that we both work for smallish companies, and we find that when the CEO is engaging with the employees and hosting town halls and regular meetings and sort of sharing with the company on strategy, that it makes you feel part of the growth of the company. And I think that has a lot to do with people being happy at work and feeling part of things, especially when we are still working remotely.
Yeah. And don't you think everyone wants to feel like they're part of something bigger, something grander, something with a mission that they can identify with? Yeah. And it sounds like also the leader is very visible, which is also very important, especially during times of a lot of change. So, well, I want to just invite the rest of you, because we're going to need to move on. I want to make sure we have time for Q&A towards the end. So I just want to invite you to, if you found any best practices in your discussion groups, please go ahead and enter those into the chat area so that others can to benefit from those. All right. So let's move on then. Because I want to talk about, so what can leaders do? What are some of the things that they can do? And I'm convinced that this could be the greatest sea change in how work gets done since Frederick Taylor. I don't know if any of you remember Frederick Taylor, because it was way back in the early 20th century that he published his scientific management theory that was picked up by most industries in those days. This was during the industrial period. So there was a lot of factories, and his theory was that if we break up work into its smallest task and get people to do the same task, then they would be much more productive. He also introduced lighting into the factories and so on. So that was a big breakthrough in how work got done. And I think this is a new opportunity for employers to rethink how people get their work done, how people experience their company, and maybe even it's time to transform the face of work. So what are the best practices out there to retain employees, attract new ones, and especially women employees who are highly impacted? So you've shared some good ones. Thank you very much, Kimber and Amy. Let's see what else has been tried out there. All right, so our first idea is flexibility, which is a non-negotiable these days. According to LinkedIn, 87% of people would prefer to stay remote at least half the time. And LinkedIn has found that remote job postings attract twice or 2 times the share of views and 2.5 times the share of applications versus the traditional job postings. I have their DuckDuckGo's logo. They're an innovator in internet technology, so it makes sense that they would have a novel approach to work. Their workforce is trusted to work wherever and whenever to get the job done. So if an employee needs to drop their kids off in the morning or take an afternoon gym class, it's not a problem. And they use a lot of online tools to connect and collaborate across different time zones and all of their employees, which keeps everyone in the loop. Twitter announced just last week that they're fully reopening their offices and bringing back business travel starting on March the 15th. Their CEO made what was a temporary remote work policy permanent. And he said that employees will be allowed to work remotely now full time if that's what they're comfortable with. But of course, he also stressed the benefits of coming to the office. So he didn't take that completely off the table. He said, while employees are empowered to work wherever they feel most productive and creative, he also mentioned that office visits, team meetings, and events all bring culture to life, which is very powerful. There's American Express with 50,000 employees all over the world. They've adapted to a more flexible scheduling model for its workers. The company offers contract, part-time, full-time, and remote work opportunities. Plus, many of the positions include the ability to work from home if you're a parent, if you live a long distance from the office, or if unexpected events occur. So they're very flexible. But I want to point out that flexibility not only includes flexible schedules, work schedules, it can also mean flexing other policies, adapting workspaces and values to meet employee needs. And that's the key, to meet employee needs. And oh, by the way, remote job opportunities are much more attractive to diverse applicants. According to LinkedIn, they're more attracted to diverse applicants, especially women and members of Gen Z. So something to consider as you're reviewing your DEI strategies. All right, the second idea that I want to pose is to value skills over pedigree. So whether workers have a GED or looking for a new opportunity or charting a path beyond the traditional 4-year college route, There are more and more companies besides Apple and Netflix who are already known for this that have said that they no longer require a college diploma for some of their top jobs. So we're not talking about jobs at the entry level. We're talking about some managerial positions and professional positions that historically would have required a degree. For example, Google has posted jobs like network specialist, associate contracts manager, revenue lead, head of sales knowledge management, business intelligence manager, and the list goes on. So these are not entry-level positions. Other companies are doing the same thing, like Costco, Whole Foods, Hilton, Publix, Nordstrom, Home Depot, Starbucks, IBM, Bank of America, Chipotle, and Lowe's. You probably heard in the introduction that I once worked for a major airline, our hometown airline of Delta. And traditionally, we knew that the major airlines always required a diploma college degree to be able to be a pilot. So now major airlines like Delta and United have actually dropped their college degree requirement for pilots. They know that they've got to select not only for the technical skills, and technical skills for a pilot are very easily verifiable, but also they need abilities like, listen to this, managing a $150 million aircraft, think factory, that produces on average $100,000 in revenue per flight, with an average of 5 to 10 team members to manage, or crew members. So the airlines have decided that the college degree is no longer a good enough proxy for these kinds of abilities. So they'll use different selection methods. And of course, pilot shortage can be the catalyst, of course, for valuing skills over pedigree. LinkedIn has data that shows that US job posts that mention responsibilities without mentioning requirements received 14% more applicants per view than those jobs that prioritize requirements. So the focus on skills not only can help with hiring, increasing that pool, but it can also lead to more of a skills-based employee development and internal mobility for employees. So more and more companies are building in-house skills-based training to set up employees for future success. So as with the pilot shortage, the demand for talent exceeds the supply today, which forces hiring managers to think differently. And this is one way that they're thinking differently. The next idea I have is around coaching for employees as a retention tool and a valuing tool. It's valuing the concerns that employees have. So coaching helps employees not only reach their own objectives, like balancing their professional and personal lives, dealing with stress, taking on greater responsibility at work, all issues which have been magnified by the pandemic. But coaching has also been proven to enable improved performance, work relationships, and overall well-being, which is countering many reasons why employees, especially women, are leaving. I have a coaching colleague, who's been introducing an internal coaching program for nurses at a major hospital system in Florida. The coaching program is intended to be able to help nurses and to be able to retain them. We've already heard the statistic on the number of nurses leaving. So coaching nurse supervisors who will in turn serve as coaches for the nurses who we know are suffering from burnout. So the initial response is really favorable in terms of the nurses rediscovering their purpose and meaning in their work and emotional balance. By the way, if you want to learn more about building a pool of internal coaches, just let us know. And sorry about that. All right, so then the next idea and the last idea, then we'll open it up for Q&A, is exploring employees' experience, understanding what their needs are. I've coached too many clients in the past who learned through their 360 feedback that there were large-scale morale issues within their team, and it was almost too late. So they had to incorporate a lot of different tools to first understand what were the reasons, what were the pain points for the team, and then tools to restore the morale. But it was almost too late. So we can look at generic work trends like the one from this one, the 2021 Work Trends Index, which are important to pay attention to. But really more useful is to incorporate our own tools. And I want to give you 3 ideas. First of all, collect data. Do anonymous pulse surveys if you don't already. Opportunity is there to hear about what's working well and what's getting in the way of employee productivity, working relationships, capacity to manage stress, all of the things that are plaguing our employees these days. Or actually actively listen to employees. I mean, we can host a Zoom or Teams event, but what's less straightforward is just asking your team what they need, genuinely listen, responding accordingly. So in a world that feels like it's changing by the hour, it's critical to get a sense of how our employees' needs are changing. So we need leaders to hold honest conversations with team members. It's time that leaders learn to actively listen to their employees without first making assumptions about what they need, and then showing them that their concerns have been heard. I had a client last year who again had an issue with morale in his team. And we were brainstorming about, all right, so how can you find out what their concerns are? What are their needs? We were brainstorming and I said, what if you were to actually go to the front line, to the production line and talk to them, work alongside of them? And his concern was, well, he had 2. One was that it would undermine his frontline supervisors. And the other thing, if he were to show up, and then the other thing is that he thought that they needed him to be in his office thinking about the future planning and so on, not there on the front line. So we talked about what were the most interesting conversations you had with your children? When did that take place? And he described being in the car, going back and forth to school. I said, isn't that so true with employees? Couldn't you be working alongside with them, doing what they're doing and having a meaningful conversation? And he agreed. So there's one idea, actively listening to your employees, and then also embed wellness conversations in the employee performance review process. Whether your company does reviews annually, quarterly, or monthly, make wellness a part of the process. So the review isn't just a moment for managers to provide team members with feedback. It's also a critical moment to hear from them, whether they feel valued, heard, and cared for as members of the company. This conversation shows employees that the organization really cares about them. And then it offers the bonus of allowing the company to continually improve and elevate effective well-being benefits. So those are 4 ideas. Folks, the contract between employees and employers is being rewritten, and radically so. So let's face it, employees have the upper hand right now. And if employers are not willing to learn how employee needs have changed and then do something to address those needs, like skills-based and professional development that will lead to internal mobility, hiring for skills versus for pedigrees, flexible work, well-being, greater focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, then employees will continue to leave because they can. So Kathy or Verlinda, what questions or comments do we have?
Coming.
Hey, Kathy.
So, how are you?
Good.
I got a very interesting question here. How do you get the conversation started if your company is opposed to remote work? I love my company and don't want to leave, but even working from home 1 day a week would relieve a lot of stress. So this woman wants to know, how do I get them to start talking about it?
There is a slide, Verlinda, if you want to forward it, a couple of slides there's a slide of references that I used for research for this topic. You might want to look at, see what the business case could look like for your organization. Are you having a hard time hiring people? What's your diversity, equity, and inclusion policy look like? We know that we can attract more diverse candidates by offering remote work opportunities, that job postings that mention remote work get many, many more applicants than those that don't. So, so there's one opportunity, and I can see we're still looking at the question slide, but perhaps, hopefully, we can get the research slide, the references slide up here in a few minutes. But take a look at the business